Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Inka Vat. Xi Jinping says he doesn't just want to coexist peacefully with the United States, but to be a friend and partner of the United States. With me to discuss this, the Chinese leader's comments at this year's Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit are Chen Ming-chi, Institute for National Defense and Security Research Chief Executive Officer, and Marcin Jerzewski, European Values Center for Security Policy, Taiwan Office Head. Professor Chen and Marcin, very warm welcome to the show today. Now, those comments were made at an American business dinner following Xi Jinping's summit with US President Joe Biden. When addressing the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, Xi also called on businesses around the world to invest in China. Let's take a look at what he said. He said this year, China's economy has been steadily recovering. Its growth rate is among the highest among major economies of the world. China remains the most powerful engine of global growth and will generate 1/3 of global growth this year. China has become a synonym of the best investment destination. The next China is still China. That's a rather rosy picture of China's economy. How do you assess it?
I think it's an over-rosy picture that we all know. I think it's no secret that the journals and the newspapers around the world have called the Chinese economy slowing down very fast, and some might even say it's a structural slowdown, so it will last longer than the people expect. So three aspects of the economic growth is the investment, consumption, and the export. And since the consumer a little bit recently has seen sign of a life in recent days, and investment remains slow. The most important thing is that the real estate sector is very weak. It accounts for roughly a quarter of Chinese economy. So there's no wonder after so many years of what the so-called the dual circulation meaning to really focus on the domestic market. Xi Jinping once again want to lure those foreign investors back to China.
Right, so the dual circulation was basically an independent system where they don't need to have foreign investment.
Well, the policy intention wasn't pronounced as that, but in reality that means that want to grow their own domestic market and let it play the role of the growth engine for Chinese economy. But obviously through the 3 years of pandemic and Xi Jinping's policy uncertainty, that has failed. And that's why he had to rely more on the FDI, the foreign direct investment, and certainly the FDI-led growth. That is mainly depend upon export to boost its economy.
So in terms of sort of trying to explain it to non-experts, how bad or how worrying do you see China's economy right now?
Well, as I said, it's everybody outside of China, even inside China, many people recognize that slowing down Chinese economy is a reality. So I think, especially after the 20th Party Congress last year, Xi Jinping have to bear the whole full responsibility of Chinese economy. So that is simply by going to change the attitude and going to San Francisco to lure those foreign investor. It's a sign of its economic weakness, and also needs some injection of the global capital to save the Chinese economy.
To save the Chinese economy. So, Marcin, Professor there mentioned, the appeal, the beseeching of investment into China that Xi Jinping obviously has set out to do. Now, there was a dinner for American businesses, essentially held in Xi's honor. It was organized by the US-China Business Council. There were about 400 of Silicon Valley and Wall Street top executives there. And as we already mentioned, Xi told them China is ready to be a partner and friend of the United States. When we look at the American side, they actually gave Xi Jinping 3 standing ovations. How keen are they to get back into the Chinese market?
I think that in general in the United States and in Europe, we have seen that the business community has been more China-friendly than the governments of these respective countries. So essentially, since China embarked on the policy of going out, it has become an important it has become an important destination for international investments, and for many businesses from the Western world, it became a very lucrative investment destination. So,
but all that's changed now, hasn't it?
I believe that it has changed at the level of government. So what I'm trying to say here is to draw a distinction between the similar attitudes of governments and business actors. Right now, the United States government, much like the European Union, wants to de-risk the relationship with China, de-risk the supply chains that currently overly rely on the Chinese market. And the business sector is not as keen on de-risking or moving their capital away from China, it appears, which might explain why, amid rising US-China competition, the excitement of the business community to meet with Xi was still felt in the air.
Professor Chen, I mean, that's interesting that there is eagerness, and yet let's take a look at China's foreign direct investment flows. You've mentioned this earlier in the show. In the third quarter of this year, we can see there China experienced a deficit of $11.8 billion. You can see it's basically dropped off the cliff. Now, it's reportedly the first time this has occurred since records began. So, as you mentioned yourself, Xi Jinping is worried about this. This is why he went to San Francisco. This is why he's asking for investment. Let's also take a look at another one. US-China Business Council survey this year. According to the peak body, 34% of members have stopped or reduced investment plans in China in 2023. As you can see, this proportion is higher, about 10% higher, isn't it, than the previous year. So, you know, for them, they don't just pull out without having reasons for doing that. So how does the business community view China, given that it has already started to extricate itself from the Chinese market?
Certainly. Just as the U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo say once this year that many American business leaders consider China as uninvestable already. I think due to two reasons. First, it's about the restructure of the global supply chain, especially during the pandemic. That almost made the Chinese policy also almost make the business operating there very difficult, if not to say almost impossible to operate. And secondly is about Xi Jinping's policy. He sort of take a priority of the security rather than the business interest. So including a lot of indictment of the foreign workers, of the employees of the foreign companies, had made the investment environment very bad for the foreign investor. So he want to once again show the business leader that China still welcome the foreign investment. But that remains to be see whether they really believe in it, because simply by words it's not enough. It's followed by action, but we haven't seen the action yet. For example, in Taiwan, we have seen a very strong investor in China because of political reason. The Foxconn have been subject to tax investigation, and many of the higher manager in the company is considered that it's very risky. So I think the overall environment is still not very convincing to the business community yet.
Marcin, but it seems perhaps some analysts have said that what she's trying to do is to entice the US business community to essentially press maybe Washington. So that division between the business, the commercial, and the political, they're trying to press Washington to moderate its policy towards China. But as Professor mentioned there, there are some hurdles to get across. So at that business dinner, what did she say to reassure business leaders that there will be more of a level playing field, that executives will not be targeted, that the anti-espionage law won't be cracking down on companies when essentially they're just doing due diligence?
I think that there is a growing distinction that China is trying to make amid de-risking policies. So to China, it is important that it's the businesses that lead the de-risking strategies of individual countries rather than their governments. From the Chinese point of view, the number of obstacles to attracting businesses to China rather than trying to convince governments that China is a reliable investment partner might be lower. So she was aiming at reaching this lower threshold necessary to make a convincing argument. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Professor Chen, lastly on this section, so Rupert Hammond-Chambers, he's the head of the US-Taiwan Business Council, says that these business titans, they belong essentially to the same community. So Apple CEO, Tim Cook, Tesla CEO, Elon Musk, Steve Schwarzman of the Blackstone Group. They're essentially part of the community that played a key role in the Bush-Obama era, which led with accommodationist China policies. So he really is being quite strategic in targeting these people. Now, my next guest is Steve Yates, chair of the China Policy Initiative at the America First Policy Institute, and he's a former White House Deputy Assistant to the Vice President for National Security Affairs. He believes Beijing must prove it means what it says by changing its, quote, unfriendly actions and policies. I spoke to him earlier today. Xi Jinping says he wants peaceful coexistence with the United States and that China is ready to be a partner and friend to the US. What do you think of that?
Well, unfortunately, in recent years, what he has been doing is very inconsistent with that aspiration. There have been a whole series of moves that have caused a lot of concern in the United States and has been taken very unkindly. We continue to see the encroachment and intimidation of Taiwan after the squashing of democracy in Hong Kong. We had a spy balloon go over our country. We weren't quite sure what that was all about, but it was not friendly. And then there's all the wolf warrior diplomacy that has been unleashed in recent years. So it's kind of interesting that Xi Jinping at this point wants to perhaps call a pause on his political warfare campaign, but color me skeptical that this is real until I see some significant changes in policy and action that benefit the American people in a meaningful way.
Now, on Taiwan, Xi Jinping told Joe Biden that he'd heard the reports from US officials of, 2027, 2035 as dates that China might invade Taiwan. And he seemed a little bit irritated because he said that there were no such plans that he was aware of. So is this Xi Jinping just simply setting the record straight?
Well, it wouldn't be the first time that the leader of the Communist Party of China just lied. But it also is possibly true that he doesn't have a target date along the lines of those that have been speculated about in American or other international circles. Now, if he really wanted to reassure the world, again, he could engage in more reassuring behavior. Perhaps be less verbally threatening towards Taiwan, perhaps send fewer military exercises and intimidation flights and sea exchanges in Taiwan's direction. The intimidation of the Philippines and others in the South China Sea reverberates into questions and concerns about the Taiwan Strait. And so it's all fine and good for Xi Jinping to act like he is upset by this, but he surely can't be shocked about it. He has to know what he and his government have been saying and doing, and it has not been friendly.
Do you think this is an admission that this was or has been sort of brinksmanship?
Well, I think that what we saw in San Francisco was an exchange of theater. Now, in some ways, that is what international diplomacy can be. Sometimes it amounts to shadow boxing or speaking to a specific audience to try to reshape the information environment and maybe put your country in a better position or put someone else a little less at ease. I don't know that a great deal was accomplished in this exchange. We had the President of the United States saying that he wanted to seek some return to what he considered to be normal. I and many, many others in the United States don't think you can have a normal relationship with a government that is poisoning your population, is economically threatening your population, and is also threatening your allies. And so I think that the burden is pretty much on Xi Jinping to change what he's doing, not what he's saying.
That was former White House Deputy Assistant to the Vice President for National Security Affairs, Steve Yates, speaking to me earlier. Marcin, if I can come to you first. So Republican critics of Joe Biden say that, that the administration is too willing to appease Xi Jinping. Of course, we heard there from Steve Yates, he didn't believe that normal relations between China and the US are possible. I'll give you an example. So in exchange for the deal on fentanyl, which was China agreeing to crack down on those fentanyl operators, the Americans removed essentially a public security forensic institute from their trade blacklist. Now, this company, this entity had been on that list for alleged abuses against the Uyghurs. So does this undermine Washington's moral authority?
I think that we should not be looking at this case as a question of morality. I don't think that these normative considerations that you're bringing up are something that is very high on the priority list for the Biden administration.
Really? So their stance on the Uyghurs has changed?
I believe that it's a matter of priorities, and right now the Biden administration is preparing for a potential re-election. And if we look at the track record of Biden at his political career, we can clearly see that during his 36 years of service in the Senate, he has really made the war on drugs one of the cornerstones of his policy. He has generally been a politician that represented a very strong stance on trying to combat the addiction crisis in the United States. And just like in 2020, the question of the opioid crisis in the United States will be one of the main policy debates taking place ahead of the presidential election. So I believe that when it comes to making these difficult decisions in approach to China, domestic interests played a greater role than normative considerations that we normally consider so important in foreign policy of the United States.
Professor Chen,
Yes.
would you agree with that? Or, as some analysts have said, Washington actually had a stronger hand to play, given the need for foreign direct investment, especially from the American business community?
But for the time being, I think the U.S., especially the Biden administration, prioritized to manage the competition with China. Is high on the list. Therefore, he's willing to sort of make some nice gestures to Xi Jinping so as to persuade him to resume the military-to-military talk and things like that. And I don't see that particularly as a sign of weakness. I think this is a little bit of a give and take in the negotiation table. But we have to remember that when he come out of this talk, Biden still calls Xi Jinping a dictator. I think that is not really a very nice gesture, isn't it? So I think the big structure remain the same. The big power competition remain the same, but they have to micromanage some details, especially the thing that Biden take very seriously. Especially it's only 1 year before the election in the United States.
Okay, so Marcin, still the underlying rivalry remains the same. Analysts say that China will emphasize harmony while exploiting global divisions in 2024. Let's take a look at another comment by Xi Jinping.
无论今后发展到哪一步，我们都永远不称霸、不扩张、不强加于人、不谋求势力范围、不同任何国家打冷战、热战。
So we saw there comments that may seem a little bit out of place with compared to China's actions. China will never pursue hegemony or expansion, will never impose its will on others.
I think that this is definitely the case of China saying one thing and doing another. However, when we think about China and the way it's trying to shape its position in international politics, we often refer to China as a discourse power. So a part of the appeal of China is the way it shapes the conversation about the global balance of power. And I believe that Here, China is really distancing itself from the accusations by the United States and also many in other Western countries that it is, in fact, seeking hegemony and regional expansionism. So I am not really taken by surprise that she decided to frame his speech in San Francisco in those terms, clearly juxtaposing his message with discourse on China, which has become mainstream in the West.
Surely that would dent his credibility, though. Now let's, and also at APEC, Taiwan is represented not by the president due to pressure from Beijing, but over the last several years by Maurice Chang. The TSM founder and chairman met this year with US Vice President Kamala Harris, as he did last year, and shared pleasantries with Joe Biden, whom he had wanted a meeting with. Let's take a look at what he said.
My interactions with President Biden of a social, in fact, I might say, humorous nature.
Professor Chen, so there was no interaction at all with Xi Jinping this year. How do you read this in terms of what Maurice Chang achieved compared with last year?
Well, I think even last year it's just just very common dialogue. Say hi, some nice gesture, and nothing beyond that last year. So I think we should not make a big issue out of this comparison this year compared to last year.
Okay, and what did you make of Biden himself? Not because ahead of the summit, of course, Maurice Chang said that he had wanted to have a formal meeting with Joe Biden.
Well, probably there is a busy schedule. I mean, after all, Biden is occupied not only by the APEC meeting, but also in the Israel and Hamas conflict in Middle East, and also we have a war going on in Ukraine. There are so many things going on. So I was not surprised to see that there's not a big formal conversation between the founder of TSMC, Maurice Chang, and Joe Biden, the President of the United States. I think Taiwan, U.S., as many U.S. government officials like to describe the relationship on some solid, rock-solid foundation. I think that's more important, and that's how we observe in the past several years.
So that strength hasn't changed. Okay, Marcin, Chinese state media, they've sort of crowned this trip of Xi Jinping to San Francisco as a week of success. The Washington Post described the change from essentially hostile narratives about the US to now this sort of glowing talk of the most productive, comprehensive and constructive talks as a kind of whiplash. Can you chart for us how that narrative has changed?
I believe that we are now seeing a period of relative normalization in relations between the United States and China. And I think that it was very important for both sides to reassure one another that the most orthodox red lines still remain in place, also those related to the situation in Taiwan, which I think might partially explain the lack of meeting between President Biden and Maurice Chang representing Taiwan. So this ends a year-long stalemate in relations between China and the United States, which began with the visit of Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan.
Okay, Professor Chen, would you like to comment on state media's narrative change?
Well, China is always rhetoric. They say one thing, and in action they do another. Just as the Xi Jinping just tried to project a very peaceful image before or during the APEC meeting. Just today, they have sent more sortie in to cross the medium line. I think that's not, their action doesn't really match their words. So a lot remain to be observed.
And do you see, Marcin, in state media this attempt to portray Xi Jinping as a great global statesman?
I think that there is an effort to not only portray him as a great global statesman, but also a messenger of peace. And this is strongly connected to this discursive dimension of China's power that it seeks to project internationally. I think that a part of the appeal of China, particularly in the countries of the global south, is its narrative of non-intervention in domestic political affairs of international powers. So that's another area in which China clearly juxtaposes itself with the United States, and the narrative that he brought with himself to San Francisco is really hitting hard those very points, China being a nation of peace.
Professor Chen, very final question. So after the months of build-up to APEC, to this meeting between Xi Jinping and Joe Biden, he did eventually travel there. Can we say, or to what extent can we say, it's been a success for US-China relations?
I would say that China need to do more to let the people outside of China believe in his words. The thing is that the state media can dial up people's nationalist sentiment, and when it need, you can dial it down. And also, I think Biden haven't really bought into that rhetoric of improving the Sino-U.S. relationship. He haven't given on the Xi Jinping's request to relax the high-tech export control. And he haven't really backed down on his support of Taiwan, and he also mentioned about he concerned about China's election intervention in Taiwan. I think these are the things that is fundamental for their relationship. So they are now just temporary, reach a sort of a rather calm period, and we hope that the relative calm period can last longer. But I think the world is no longer under the illusion that China will change its behavior, its external behavior.
Professor Chen and Marcin, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.